You're watching Force 13's live streaming service. Hello and welcome to Force 13 Live. We have a moderate risk for tomorrow. Currently we're looking at on the screen today's slight risk, which is manifesting across southern Texas. But we're all here, of course, to discuss the big event that will be on the way tomorrow evening, Monday, with a moderate risk, that's 4 out of 5, for large parts of Oklahoma and southern Kansas, including Oklahoma City and Wichita. So a lot to cover in this, and I'm just going to try and get everything in order here. My name's Nathan Foy, and I'm joined by my team. We have quite a few people with us right now, and they're showing all kinds of stuff. We have got Ethan, David, Jack, Maury, and Samuel with us this evening. And we're all going to be talking about this big red blob that we've got on our screen right now, which is the moderate risk that's in effect for day 2, which is Monday. And that will, of course, become day 1 when we get to the advisories or the updates from the SPC early in the morning or late tonight local time. It could be an event that lasts for quite a while tomorrow evening. It's going to be a big long line of storms, severe storms, with potentially discrete supercells on either side of that line throughout the course of tomorrow afternoon and evening. They're suggesting the initiation time for all this will be early afternoon, particularly in Kansas, probably about 2 p.m. according to the local National Weather Service office in Wichita. Right, we're joined by quite a few people right now. We have also, as I mentioned before, but we've also got some animals with us as well by the sounds of things. Ethan, is Mitchell there with you right now? Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent. Do you want to tell us about what's going on right now? Because that's what you're looking at there.
Righty, Mitchell aside, so right now we have I don't know what to call it, like a mini line or like a very small cluster of severe thunderstorm warnings at this point for 60-mile-per-hour wind gust and 1-inch hail. Pushing off towards the east very slowly. Movement per the National Weather Service is east at about 35 to 40 miles an hour overall with this line. Another one is even warned for 20. So these lines are moving very slowly off towards the east here, and will gradually sag towards the Corpus Christi metro over the next 2 hours or so. It should be a very slow mover. Thankfully, there isn't really a whole lot of population areas out here, thankfully, so we're not really going to be seeing too much impact. It's going to be to agricultural interests at this point, for the time being, of course. But it's not guaranteed that this line makes it entirely to Corpus Christi either, given that it is sort of on the southern end of today's slight risk area, which is in that yellow area for the area of southern Texas.
Yeah, an interesting area on that slight risk today, and it's... I can't remember what it's mostly for. I've not been paying much attention on this, but was it hail?
Mainly for hail. I mean, there is an isolated tornado threat. I'll pull this up here. There's the tornado risk for tonight. Mm-hmm. You see it does extend over a large area, has to be said. But the main threat tonight is going to be hail, as we do have a significant hail risk. But that has since, I believe, will not be transpiring tonight, I believe, for this region. Or maybe it already has. I'm not entirely sure. But once this line really dies out as it pushes off towards the south, I think this is the remnant of our cluster up here. Once this dies out, that's our event. That's it.
Well, that's good, and I'd feel very happy about that if it wasn't for what's going on tomorrow, where we've got this massive risk. Why don't you give us your take on that, what we're expecting tomorrow, Ethan?
So first off, we have to go over what we have right now, and that is the Storm Protection Center's Day 2 outlook that was issued at... I'm trying to think what the time is. 12:30 p.m. Central, 1:30 p.m. Eastern, and we have a level 4 out of 5 moderate risk for this red area. Does include Oklahoma City, does include a little bit of Wichita, does also include a little bit of Western Oklahoma. Elk City is maybe teetering on the edge between enhanced and moderate there, you can see there. Just to zoom in on that one. So this is mainly going to be a tornado and hail driven risk. You can see there we have a 15% significant tornado risk. So what does this mean? Well, basically what this means is there is a 15% chance of a tornado within 25 miles of a given point, and that significant aspect of thing, which is a hatch, is what we call it in the weather business. There's that hatch area for tornadoes tomorrow. What does that mean? Well, that basically means that there's always a chance in this area that some tornadoes could be strong. We're talking about in the ratings of EF2 or stronger tornadoes possible within this area. It's not guaranteed, but it just means that there is a significant possibility of those kind of strong tornadoes occurring within this area. You notice that that does include a much larger area than our main moderate risk area here. Just to compare the two, I'll circle our moderate risk area here to the best of my ability. It's not going to be a rough outline. I mean, that's pretty good actually. But you can see there. Look at that. It's the significant tornado area. Almost, I want to say, is twice as big as our moderate risk area is for tomorrow, Nathan.
It's almost encapsulating the whole enhanced risk there. Certainly,
indeed, it is.
The west and southern edges, that's the enhanced risk shape. But also, and they don't factor this in with their percentages on hatchings or whatever, but they've mentioned it in their outlook about long tracking tornadoes as well.
Yes, there is going to be that chance as well tomorrow. Some tornadoes could be on the ground for more than 30 minutes. I think that's generally the borderline time frame for when we call long tracking tornadoes, 25, 30 minutes around there. So of course we could see that because 25 to 30 minutes, considering that a tornado moving at about 70 miles an hour, that's only about 35 to 40 miles in 30 minutes. That might not seem like a whole lot, but in tornado climatology, that is a long distance for that to cover. Because remember, most tornadoes typically aren't on the ground for maybe more than a minute.
Mm-hmm. And you got Oklahoma City in there as well, and Norman, and all the other places that we're very familiar with. 30 minutes of that, I mean, pretty bad.
And I know that that some people are always going to ask the question: could this go up to a high risk event? There's always the chance that it absolutely could. There's always the chance. There's never a non-0% chance. But for this particular event, I don't think it's going to happen. Primarily because there's just too much uncertainty with what could and what couldn't happen. That preludes a high-risk event. Certainly, there are going to be some kinematic events or some kinematics or some environmental conditions in this event that will support a high risk on their own. But that doesn't mean that everything else will, if that makes sense as well.
Just makes me wonder, Ethan, have they ever gone and, during an event, when things are turning out worse than they thought, have they pushed it up to a high during an event?
I don't think they have. Let me look.
Close, yeah. Following up on that, I believe the closest, or at least the most recent example, if not the closest to that example, would be the March 31st tornado outbreak from last year, when there were actually two of those high risks that were issued separately, which is actually a first for the SPC.
Yeah.
But going back to the topic, I believe the event already was in progress before it was upgraded, before the high risk was upgraded. Probably not to its full, definitely not to its full extent, but it was starting out once as the high risks were about to be issued.
No, on March 31st of last year, there was a message discussion issued about an hour before the midday outlook that was saying, hey, we're going to issue a high risk for that. And that was well before the event began, so that was a regularly scheduled outlook. That was not a special one.
Okay.
Interesting to see if anything like that happens tomorrow then, but we don't think so.
That came close. Tomorrow, now personally for me, tomorrow I don't see a high risk being issued. I'd say right now if I had to put a percentage on it, and this is just my opinion, I would say at the most right now, I'd give it a 10% risk. But because I really doubt that they're going to, because of the uncertainties that they're going to add one. I would think it would be more likely, though, that they could actually expand the moderate risk further to the northeast, especially with how much of that enhanced risk is, how big that enhanced risk of the northeast.
Oh,
Doesn't mean
yes.
necessarily that it will, but there definitely could be some room if things start uptrending further north.
Potential right
Then
there.
we could see a northeast possible northeast sort of expansion, but not. I wouldn't say too far to the northeast.
Here's the latest HRRR model run on my screen right now, showing this line of storms, and it is linear in that sense, but there's a few supercells along there, and later on in the evening, after dark, you get another big burst there and a few more supercells blowing up there, mainly along the border between Oklahoma and Kansas. I'm still struggling to see why the moderate risk extends so far south. I don't know if any of you guys have an answer for me on that one.
So the reason why the moderate risk extends further towards the south, Nathan, and I'll pull up the 18Z
That's what I was just looking
here.
at.
Well, are you looking at reflectivity or are you looking at conditions?
Show us what you want to show us, Ethan, and
So this is going to be a very simplified version of what we're looking at for tomorrow. So basically what we're looking at is these higher pink colors or these brighter colors. You'll see them here in just a second. And that will basically give us our area. So you can see there they are. And you can see that's why the moderate risk extends that far south, Nathan, because kinematics that farther south or conditions will be favorable for a tornado or tornadic supercells to form. Doesn't mean that they would necessarily will. It's not always a guarantee that just because that oh hey the moderate is going to go this far south. It doesn't always guarantee that storms are even going to form because there's this thing called the cap, and that's basically when the atmosphere is having limited or is basically putting a limit on storm development. And once that cap breaks, that's pretty much all hell breaks loose. That's what we call it in the weather business. And as long as that cap holds, that will prevent tornadic supercells from forming.
Now,
Think of it as cloud constipation.
Oh my god, that's not. The latest NAM has a little bit more than what the HRRR is showing. Now, let's not forget that the NAM has a linear bias, folks, so it could be worse than this. But it shows more coverage across Oklahoma there, moving eastwards on that 18Z run. So would you say that that's a more likely scenario in terms of coverage? Certainly a line of storms moving across there.
Yep, that's going to be the primary threat. I don't think that it's going to be as linear as what the NAM 3 kilometer is saying.
They always have linear bias.
Yeah, but you can see once these storms really clear central Kansas and get into east central Kansas, these storms are much more linear in shape and size. This frame here is 9 p.m. Central, 10 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah,
much more linear here as things progress, and that's a relatively common thing here with these kind of Midwest events. You have these supercells that'll form up across the plains and will do their stuff, and as they move into Arkansas, Missouri, and maybe even sometimes portions of southeastern Iowa, sometimes they'll remain tornadic supercells, sometimes they will. But most of the time, generally, they transition into a damaging line or a QLCS, a quasi-linear convective system, as we call it. And that's generally what we're going to be seeing with this event. It's going to be following a very common trend that we see with these kind of events. And that's mainly going to transition the threat from mainly tornadoes and hail to mainly damaging winds. That's not going to say that the tornado threat is going to disappear entirely along with the hail threat. The hail threat will still be there. It's just that the hail threat will be significantly lessened. Now, the tornado threat is going to remain quite present. Not saying it's going to be as significant as it would be down in Oklahoma, but, with these kind of QLCS systems that we always have. Dixie Alley gets them, or the Gulf Coast states gets them a lot during the winter, and you see how bad they can be down there.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of thing that we're going to be seeing here. Not saying that the tornadoes within this line are going to be super bad, but just saying that they could be super bad, and there is the potential for them to be relatively strong initially. But as you can see, as this line does progress further into Tuesday here, it will indeed weaken with eastward extent, maybe remaining severe through Tuesday morning at the morning hours. So maybe some areas, maybe St. Louis here, will have a very rocky start to their Tuesday morning commute.
Oh, that late. Yeah.
And
Now,
if you're,
earlier on,
go ahead.
before we went on air, Ethan, you wouldn't be drawn as to timing on this event properly yet. What we're seeing on models is that it could be as early as 1 p.m. In parts of central, sort of western Kansas, and the event looks like it would be in full flow by probably about 4 o'clock. That's what we're seeing on models at the minute, and what I've seen from National Weather Service offices is pretty much going along with that. So I don't know if you had any different thoughts.
That's probably generally going to be the time. It's going to be fairly concise a little bit. I mean, it might it might differentiate, I guess you could say, from maybe like an hour or two, but generally the early to mid afternoon hours is generally a common theme for when storms will form. That's generally how these kind of things work in May and Tornado Alley. That's generally how things will work.
And if you've just joined us to take a look back at the current situation, it is a slight risk day in southern Texas. There is a severe thunderstorm warning in that region. I'm not familiar with this area between Nuevo Laredo and Corpus Christi. So you can see that storm moving along southeasterly, and Corpus Christi getting somewhat close to that storm sort of bow that's moving along there right now. Feel free to share the stream, and if you want to support us, there's loads of links underneath our description as well. But in the meantime, we're still talking about mainly tomorrow's event, whilst keeping one eye open on today, but looks like most of that is taken care of. Sam, I don't know if you had any more thoughts on what we've been discussing in the last few minutes.
Yeah, I do want to add, obviously the severe risks are going to continue into Tuesday and Wednesday, as we're going to be seeing consecutive days where where we have back-to-back slight plus risks over the lower Mississippi and into the mid-Ohio Valley, primarily.
There's the day 3 outlook on the screen here, that yellow zone being a big old slight risk for a large area, including Indianapolis, Ethan.
The slight risk for tomorrow is, or not for tomorrow, this is for Tuesday. So here's how these kind of things work. Comes to timing for.
Oh, I think Ethan just had a little malfunction.
Yeah. These kind of things happen. I'm sorry about that. But basically, how these SPC outlooks go, and I'll pull this up here to show what they mean for the current outlook for today. So you can see here it says valid, and this is what it means. Basically, it means that the outlook is valid for a certain time, and it's valid until 06. That's the date, and then you have 12 o'clock Z. That's the time when this outlook will expire, and the next one for tomorrow in this case will take place of that one, and that is going to be 7 a.m. tomorrow morning Central, and that's 8 p.m. Eastern. So that means that this outlook for day 3 goes into effect technically if this outlook doesn't change as it is right now. This is for basically from 7 a.m. Central to 8 a.m. Eastern through the day for that day. So it's going to be when those storms are in this area. And if I pull up the latest HRRR run, and if I go to... let's go here. So if I go to, let's say, what's the
What model are you on?
Tuesday? Let's go to the 7th at. Sorry, I'm trying to narrate as I do this.
What model is that?
It's that's the I'm on. That might be why. Anyway, if we go to Tuesday at when this outlook would go into effect, you see, there we go, right on the western end of that slight risk for day 3. So
And that's the same thing that's causing tomorrow, is it?
yes, this is the leftovers. This is the leftovers of it.
And you still see a few storms moving out and ahead of it there.
Yeah, they might do something. I don't really think that the tornado risk for Tuesday is going to be overly large. I think it's going to be much higher on Wednesday, if you ask me, rather than than Tuesday. Yes, Wednesday looking like it could be another major day.
God. All right, then. We'll take your word for that. Let's get some comments. There's been a few comments. Start your message with full city and all in text on the YouTube chat. Patrick says, very concerned for the risk of dangerous nocturnal tornadoes across Oklahoma. Could even get upwards of long-track intense to violent tornadoes given favorable shear instability. I wouldn't worry about nocturnal tornadoes in Oklahoma because the lines shifts out pretty much almost to the border by sunset. So only the easternmost fringes of Oklahoma will have any kind of tornadic threat after dark.
I think it would align with that as well.
But what do we think about if there are any long tracking tornadoes tomorrow, which there may well be, moving through, say, eastern Oklahoma or eastern Kansas into Arkansas, Missouri, into the night? Will they still be as destructive or strong?
I think it's possible. I think it's still possible because we still do see some supercells in the region just in front of the line in southwestern Missouri into northeastern Oklahoma into southeastern Kansas. Not as many, I would like to point out. So that definitely is a little different, but it still is some supercell potential all the way into about 7Z.
All right, that was Maury. Let's just take another quick look at the tornado, or all the risk areas for the different categories. There's the tornado threat for tomorrow, that red zone. In the middle is the 15% chance, and the hatchings there are those significant tornado parameters. The yellow zone is 10%. The sort of brown zone is 5% there. Very large 5% risk, really. Obviously the two. Then let's take a look at the hail. There's hail right now, and that's sitting at, what percentage is that? Is that 45%?
Yes.
Yes, which is the equivalent of a moderate risk, and it does have the hatch tag on it. So that's another thing that is warranting a moderate risk issuance right now. That and the tornado risk at this point.
Yep, big old one for hail there in that pink zone, and that big hatched area as well. We could see some very large hail. SPC saying up to 4-inch hail. And looking at the winds, there's also hatchings on that one as well. And is that 30%?
Is it red or is it purple?
Yep, it's red, 30%.
Purple. If it's red, it's 30. If it's purple, it would be 45. And quite frankly, 45 significant wind, that's a moderate risk right there on its own.
As well, yeah. So that's the risk parameters. The wind goes much further east there, shoring up that enhanced risk zone. The hail, barely reaches Kansas City, and the tornado is closer, really, in terms of the risk threat there. So it really does look like the threat drops off a cliff when you move into Missouri and Arkansas. To an extent, not fully, but certainly relatively speaking, compared to central Oklahoma and southern Kansas, that is the prime area that we're looking at tomorrow. Now, Redneck Lover 22 says, what is the severe weather outlook for Kansas City tomorrow? Well, there it is in front of us. 5% tornado risk. What was it for hail there? They're in, I think that's 5% as well, whatever the percent is there, the low one. And for wind, it's, they're in high for wind though, they're 30% there for wind. Just outside of the SIG area, however, for Kansas City. Now, let's see what else we have here. Do we think for this one we could get a high risk for severe weather and hurricane season is coming up? How historic do you think this season could be? Oh, goodness, so many questions into one comment right there. Well, we already discussed the high risk chances earlier. We collectively don't think that's going to happen unless we see a big shift. As for the hurricane season on the way, well, we'll probably have a lot more to say about that at the end of the month. There could be a typhoon forming next week, but no real signs of anything in the Atlantic yet. Will it be a historic season? Any year could be an historic season, even the quiet ones. So I would, well, let's just say the potential is higher than usual because we're expecting storm tracks to shift further west, and I suppose if it is more likely than not going to be historic for someone. If it's not for the US coast, then maybe somewhere in the Caribbean.
And that's, I want to say, especially for this year, anyone who is along those coasts, now is the time to prepare.
Hurricane Preparedness Week this week, May the 5th to 11th, in case anyone was interested in that. I don't know what they're doing for it, but it is Hurricane Preparedness Week.
I feel like this week is going to be especially important considering how active we're expecting this year's hurricane season to be.
And there's Redneck Lover 22 as well. Thank you for your message. Almost 2 years of support. We applaud you, Redneck Lover 22. Great stuff, and we appreciate that. What else have we got here right now? Just people saying May is the worst month for severe weather. Welcome to May. It's going to be a big event, you know. I mean, we were looking at the climatological norms earlier, a few days ago, weren't we? And early May, right now, is the time, isn't it?
Yep, that is absolutely the primary time now.
Is there anything else you wanted to show us on your screen right now?
Well, I've got the day 4 outlook out. This is for Wednesday.
It's very similar to day 3.
Not really. It's much larger than the day 3 risk zone.
Okay.
For just to compare for you, the square mileage area under risk for day 3 versus day 4. This is not population. This is just for like square miles. It's around 200,000 for the day 3 risk, and for day 4, it is an area of double that.
Oh, okay.
400,000 square miles.
You wonder though. That's 15%, which is equivalent to a slight, right?
Yes.
It just makes you wonder why, or what reason that's a massive area. Plenty of room to put a 30% in there, isn't there?
Yes, and I do think that there is the possibility that when the SBC issues their day 3 outlook come 3:30 a.m. Eastern tonight. That's 2:30 a.m. Central. I do think that there is always the possibility that they might issue a day 3 outlook with an enhanced risk for some of this.
Well, it's happened a couple times already this year, so.
Including just yesterday.
Yeah, just yesterday. I thought we had another comment or two. Nope, not really at this time. Just bring you back to what's going on right now, just so that everyone's in the loop. There is 1 or 2 severe thunderstorm warnings active west of Corpus Christi, Texas. There's some thunderstorms moving along there southeast. So just past Interstate 35, moving on further southeasterly there in the general direction of Corpus Christi. We appreciate your support on the stream, and support links in the description. And we'll be covering obviously the big event tomorrow, which they say National Weather Service suggesting that initiation could be as early as 1 p.m. Or more likely to have proper initiation by the time we get to about 3, and definitely by 4. So that's pretty much the takeaway for tomorrow's event, and we're gonna keep talking about it. Let's go back to the categorical outlook just to remind everyone that's the moderate risk, which is in effect for large parts of Oklahoma. Apart from Oklahoma City, though, it is generally sparse, but there are a few other places in there as well. The north side of Lawton, we have got Clinton and Weatherford, and further north, of course, we have Enid, and in southern Kansas, of course, it's Wichita. So it's, if that moderate was shifted further east, there's a lot more populations east of Oklahoma City, of course, Tulsa there as well. So do we think, well, we were talking about earlier that whole area there could see a big moderate extension tomorrow if things go right for it.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's definitely possible it'll be extended further north. Not quite east. I don't
Really?
see it being extended east. Because that is when it gets linear. I mean, maybe a little bit further east, maybe to just west of Tulsa.
All right, I can see that.
Specifically in the northern areas, though, I think it would be extended east, not the southern areas, because there's only one lone supercell in the south that moves far enough east where you could extend it. Uh,
On the models.
yeah. Well,
We don't
that's
know
on
what's going to happen.
that's the H-triple-R model. Of course, the NAM is showing something different. It's showing a lot more supercell coverage in Oklahoma. However, they kind of turn into a mess of a line as they move towards the eastern part of Oklahoma. So that is why I don't think the moderate risk will be extended quite east, but I do think north. Also, the enhanced risk could be expanded further north as well, uh, possibly up towards Nebraska. And I am also noticing a few supercells that pop up in South Dakota, but I don't know if that will be enough to warrant an enhanced risk.
No, I mean, only just in the slight, but significant part of Iowa in the slight there as well. Feel free to send us your comments and questions. We've covered most of the main bases, so we're probably just going to be chilling a little bit more in the second half of this hour. But Sam, I don't know if you have any other comments you want to share with us right now about what we've been talking about.
Yeah. I do want to share some. I do want to share some tips. Well, before I go into the tips, I do want to note that this risk, for the risk for Tuesday, has actually shifted pretty significantly to the south and east.
Oh
From
yeah,
what it
because you
was
you were
last time.
complaining about that earlier, weren't you, off air?
I was. I was talking about how Ethan was stealing my severe weather away from me.
Tut tut.
Yeah, but jokes aside, I do want to share some safety tips on especially for those in the significant tornado risks, regardless of whether this is going to be a moderate or high risk, especially for those, even for those in enhanced and even into some of the slight risks. You'll want to have a plan and a proper shelter that you'll want to designate in case you are put under any kind of tornado warning, especially with how much potential tomorrow's event has. So if you are put under a tornado warning, or even a severe thunderstorm warning with a tornado possible, given the potential of tomorrow's event, um, you will want to take what a lot of us call tornado precautions, and those tornado precautions are you will want to get to the lowest floor, preferably a basement if you have one, or a storm shelter if there is one nearby and you can't get underground. The best place to obviously be is underground, but if not, what you want to get into a sturdy sturdy structure with a small interior room. Most likely that's going to be an interior bathroom or a closet, um, and as far away from windows and the outside walls as possible. You will also want to cover your head and neck with any soft objects such as pillows, blankets, or even a helmet that you can use to protect your head at least, since the main cause of tornado deaths and serious injuries are blunt force trauma to the head and neck from flying debris. And if you are out driving and you are put under a tornado warning, um, especially if you're on the highway, you do not want to seek shelter under an
Yeah.
overpass. Overpasses do not provide any protection from tornado or severe thunderstorm winds, because what actually happens is that those can actually be due to the smaller space and open air outside. Um, it's
It's a
still
wind tunnel.
exposed to the outside. It basically makes a wind tunnel that accelerates those winds and makes flying debris that much more dangerous to you.
And also during the afternoon, I mean, planning ahead, uh,
Absolutely,
stay close to home.
especially if you're in a enhanced or even the moderate risk, because actually some schools, I believe, yeah, school will be in session, 'cause obviously it's a school day. Some schools will let out early due to the high threat of severe weather, to give people a chance, to give people better chances of seeking shelter, especially if they have a basement, or can better protect themselves. So you will possibly see some early dismissals because of severe weather in those areas.
Still getting a few more comments about whether it would be a high risk or not, or the chances of it. I would still say the chances are quite low at the moment, unless we see. I mean, what would prompt a high risk? Would they have to see? I mean, I guess they'd want to see a big uptrend in the models, whether it's the actual cells that form or whether it's the atmospheric conditions. What would it take, Ethan?
Primarily, the conditions and kinematics would have to get better. They'd have to get probably a little bit better than what they already are. There are already some kinematic like things that already support a high risk on their own, but there's still some uncertainty as well, and that's going to certainly have a pretty serious factor in determining whether or not the SPC actually issues a high risk or not.
Yeah, and you also have to take into account that they also have to be more confident in where they're going to put that high, and where they can put a higher risk,
Oh, that's
especially
something I
given
wanted to ask. You know
location.
how in March and early April we had so many busts, didn't we? um, and more recently, in the last few weeks, we've seen a lot of overperforming events. Has that borne any, bearing on their decision making regarding this event, or do they just take it all as it comes without any favor or bias?
I think um, I really think that given that the SBC has admittedly been a bit less accurate as of late, I'm sure like they might be, they might have some kind of there might be some kind of flack they might be getting, most of the time, but most of the time, obviously they're pretty good at getting these accurate, having these pretty rather accurate, and they
Right.
really don't upgrade. They don't upgrade, especially to moderate and high risk, without enough confidence to
Mm-hmm.
support it, especially on the models. But the other thing is the models aren't going to tell you specifically everything that's going to happen that day. It only gives you a general idea of what could happen. Doesn't necessarily mean it will
Yep.
happen, because there are a lot of varying factors such as cap
Yep.
and kinematics and other stuff that um,
Yeah.
would make or break this.
As people just
Sit-
mentioned in the comments there
situation.
about that, yeah. Let's take a look at what some of the National Weather Service offices are saying today then. Here is the view from Norman, and they're showing the, if we just turn Ethan's window off at the top, be able to see more of it, the risk potential for tomorrow there. Tornado potential medium. Maximum hail size up to softball, maximum wind speed 80 plus miles per hour, and that's moderate risk there for those zones, and you can see some of those towns and cities included. Here's the categories, a little once again an educational piece there by them, what they mean. I don't know if anyone's noticed, I'm sure a lot of people have, they've been switching more towards the numbers these days because they did a study that the textual definitions are a bit confusing, so they're really shifting towards those numbers 1 to 5. And of course, moderate is 4 out of 5, and many severe storms producing very large hail damaging winds and or tornadoes scattered to numerous severe storms expected. They say, though, at the bottom, no matter the category, always keep a watch on changing conditions, monitor trusted weather sources, ensure multiple ways of receiving weather warnings at all times, day or night, and have a plan. Be ready to take shelter immediately. I think a lot of people feel like the weather should work around them, but it doesn't always work out that way. And this is the timing that they're saying for this region. In Zone 1 there, which is those places out west, Altus, Clinton, Woodward, and Lawton just about. Earliest start 1 p.m, most likely 3 till 8, ending by 9. And in Zone 2, Oklahoma City, Enid, Stillwater, Ardmore in those areas. Earliest start 3, most likely 6 till 12 midnight, ending by 1 a.m. And in number 3 there, Durant, just over there, and Ada, 6 p.m. earliest start, most likely 8 till 1, ending by 2 a.m. And they reckon the storm motion, Ethan, will be 35 to 45 miles an hour.
That's generally going to be the motion speed, I think, for the whole duration of this event, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and there it is on Ethan's view once again, showing the extent of those warnings. Well, let's take a look at what Wichita are saying as well. Not on that one, that was Sundays. We're not doing that tonight. This is Wichita, confidence increasing for ingredients coming together to create a severe weather outbreak over the region Monday afternoon, Monday night. That was a mouthful. Stay tuned as we continue to make updates to the locations most at risk. Level 4 once again for southern Kansas there. And 3 enhanced covering a really large area of the state as well. Here's another graphic from them. They're pretty confident about the timing. Thunderstorms developing over western Kansas early in the afternoon and move northeast across central Kansas between 2 and 8. Thunderstorms developing and moving into those middle areas between 4 and 11 and moving eastward, affecting the easternmost part of the state and into Kansas City 8 p.m. till 3 a.m. quite late for you guys over there. Here's looking further east now from Springfield, Missouri. Key messages: thunderstorms expected late Monday evening into Tuesday morning. Potential for significant damaging winds is what they're mostly worried about, in addition to a few short-lived tornadoes and severe hail nickels to quarters. That's what they're saying in Springfield, and they're showing another graphic there of the timing of this event over there. Up to quarter-sized hail, damaging winds 60 to 80 miles per hour. 9 p.m. till 1 a.m. moving over the border. 12 a.m. till 4 a.m. for places like Springfield and Lebanon. And 3 a.m. till 7 a.m. For locations further east such as Rolla and St. Louis. We may as well go through all of these that I've already got planned up here. This is Topeka, Kansas. They're in mainly at level 3 enhanced, Wichita just on the very bottom of that screen there. It's cut off by my face, but I can tell you the severe threats they've got listed: tornado medium, hail between medium and high, wind the same but higher, and flooding relatively low. Confidence increasing in a line of severe thunderstorms moving through Monday afternoon into Monday night. And this, once again, is their timings there as well. Abilene, that's Kansas, 3 till 8 p.m. Manhattan and Marysville, 5 to 10. And Topeka and Kansas City, 7 p.m. till midnight. And there's another one, thought we'd finished. Kansas City, going with enhanced as well. Line of thunderstorms, strong straight line, damaging winds up to 70 miles per hour, large hail up to the size of $50, brief tornadoes, 0.5 to 1 inch of rainfall with locally high amounts expected, leading to additional river flooding. Alright, here's a few other things we're talking about today as well. Red flag warnings and fire weather. Gusty winds, very low humidity and drying fuels all leading to critical fire conditions today, what's left of it, and Monday. These conditions will very likely to persist into Tuesday and Wednesday for these parts of extreme western Texas, El Paso, and southern New Mexico and southern Arizona too. Here's another view there. Extended period of high fire danger through midweek for northern and central New Mexico. And high fire danger on Monday as well, even into Colorado. Red flag warning 10 a.m. till 10 p.m. Monday. Don't know if you guys have any thoughts on this fire weather that we're looking at this week.
I would not. Fire weather isn't typically my forte.
But it can be very dangerous.
Well, just be prepared. Just don't be burning items outside. Be careful with what you burn, especially when outside, because those fires can spread very quickly in those environments, especially the windy and less moist environments.
Sure can. Now, we've got a flash flood warning that was issued for a little cell out west in Texas for south central Gallia and east central Lawrence counties. There was a little cell that was blowing up that I wanted to mention earlier but didn't get the chance. Flash flooding of small creeks and streams, urban areas. That's actually another one, that isn't it? That's Ohio. The one I was talking about, though, was in Texas. To the west central Pecos County in southwestern Texas. That's the one I was thinking of there. Flash flooding caused by a thunderstorm. So be aware of that one. And on the screen right now, this is live, showing us the extent of this slight risk day today in southern Texas, with some storms heading fairly close to Corpus Christi, past the south, and new severe thunderstorm warnings just being issued there as they continue southeast. And yes, Leon Twill 07 says, don't drop cigars on the ground, it spreads fire. Yes, I don't know, you've got to be really stupid to do that, but apparently it does happen. Fancy being out with cigarettes and cigars on a critical fire weather danger day. And just, carelessly tossing it away somewhere. Anyways, we got some more questions as well. Another comment from that person saying that we should start doing tornado season animations. I'm not sure. We got to figure out how could we visualize something like that. I'm not sure. There's got to be a way, and it'll probably be a big innovation if we ever manage to do that. I'm up for the challenge if I get the time to look into it, but I don't know when that might happen. And does a sig parameter of 11 in Oklahoma mean anything? Because that's what the HRRR is saying on pivotal weather.
That basically means that conditions are quite favorable for tornadic supercells.
So 11 out of what? What is this?
I'm not sure how that whole product works. So.
Let me go and have a look at that model. We might be able to figure it out together here. I'll first throw it back to this imagery whilst I go and load that up. I'm sure I've seen this before. What you're talking about. Let me just have a look. They have the what is it? Can't find it. I'm just on my way to look for it right now, and it's was it significant tornado parameter? Yes, SIGTOR parameter. Okay, they have 11. That sounds pretty high. I'm having a look right now, and I'd have to go back to the 18Z model. It still doesn't go out far enough. Okay. It's showing some pretty high values, but the thing is, those values are quite far south. I imagine it's closely linked to... What parameter were you looking at earlier, Ethan? Was it CAPE?
No, that's the supercell composite, which is basically a combination of different factors into one product.
Right. It looks very similar to that. I don't see any 11. The scale only goes up to 9. Is it 9? Or is it... Oh, maybe it's 10. But it does go right up to the top of that scale. But I don't really understand it. Because the best conditions, clearly, Ethan, are the areas where these models, HRRR and NAM, they aren't very keen on southern Oklahoma at the minute. I just worry that there might be, at least from the model's point of view, a surprise.
Yeah. The conditions that far south are going to favor tornadic supercells. It's just a question of whether or not storms actually form.
That's it. And how does that get determined in this
We'll
situation?
also have to
It's-
see how far those conditions spread too. We'll have to see if they spread farther north.
So basically, tomorrow, if we see cells firing up in southern Oklahoma, that's a big red flag, right?
It's a pretty considerable size one, yes.
So I guess that's going to be a big thing to be looking out for during tomorrow's event. I suppose the further south these things get, the more dangerous they'll end up being. Even into northernmost Texas. I mean, they've had plenty of stuff late in recent times, haven't they? And another question there, once again, will a high risk be possible? We've covered it a few times during our stream. We think it's unlikely, but you can never say never on these things. I don't suppose anyone's changed their mind during this hour on our team.
No, I still think it's a pretty low risk right now. Well, low chance of a high risk.
And what I see a lot of people saying on social media, and they're right, is people get hung up about the risk when it's a lot more than that. It's people are always quick to want to categorize things, but it's not always as easy as that, is it?
No.
And then, of course, you've got the people who say, well, we were in a moderate risk and nothing happened, but then, 25 miles down the road, something probably did happen, didn't it? And that's what they say in these percentage chances. It's all about events occurring within 25 miles of a point anywhere within there. And the percentage chances of getting a tornado at your house, they're pretty damn low. I mean, that's why there's so many people that still live out here, because otherwise they'd all be shipping out. But nonetheless, it is a dangerous risk day tomorrow with this moderate risk, and 15 SIG on the tornadoes and 45% SIG on hail. It was hail, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Let's see what else we've got right now. Yeah, people just saying if it becomes a high risk, it would be insane. It certainly would, and that's why we don't think it will happen. But we do think that the moderate risk could be extended, maybe slightly eastwards. Maury reckons quite a bit northwards. We'll see. I'm not sure about the northward part. Maybe a little bit as well as east, but we'll have to see how that goes. But the enhanced risk certainly has some room to expand as well. But the main takeaways from what we've been chewing over in this last hour is that the event will be most dangerous, obviously, in the moderate risk zone, and it will probably drop off pretty quickly by the time it reaches the state line between Kansas and Missouri, for instance. Obviously, still could be dangerous after that, but it would appear at the moment that things will become very linear quite quickly, and certainly discrete cells will deteriorate pretty quickly when they get to those lines. Is that about right?
Yeah.
I think so.
All right then. We got just a couple minutes here, guys. So is there anything else we wanted to bring up?
Well, someone did ask to take a sounding.
All right.
If you don't know what that is, here, let me present it now.
Yes, please. Go ahead and do that.
It's basically this. Basically, it's when you can take a sounding that looks like this.
When it loads. We ain't
Oh, it's
got
not
it yet.
loaded. Oh.
Alright,
Alright, well,
things.
yeah. Well, it's not working or
Oh,
something.
damn, it ain't working for us right now.
Yeah, but basically what a sounding is, it has a few different materials that you can use to help you determine the risk for tornadoes. Basically what this risk said, I pulled it in southwestern Oklahoma. It says the hazard type would be PDS tornado. So that means that there is a pretty high risk for at least a tornado. And we'll see if that ends up translating to a PDS tornado.
We've had plenty of PDS tornadoes in the last week, haven't we?
Yeah, we have. So this is the environment that we need. And also there's a type of environment called a hodograph. There's a type of material called a hodograph. It basically is like a curvy line that signifies whether there's spin in the atmosphere or not, whether the direction of the winds are changing with height. And if there's like a huge curve at the beginning of it, that's probably a good chance of tornadoes, which there is on this sounding.
Yeah, just a shame that you weren't able to present it to us. Technical difficulties right there. Maybe your signal's too weak, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Linda said that the two dots you showed reminded me of the Fujiwara effect. The squiggly things of your screen trying to load reminded them of the Fujiwara effect. Excellent. Well, that's a note to end on. Thanks very much to our team for joining us to discuss this event. But we are going to finish up now. We've obviously got the event itself on the way. Tomorrow, from what we hear, it's going to start up at about 1 p.m. possibly Central Daylight Time, and we expect that we will be starting an automated stream in the morning before we even get to the main part of it. And then when things get properly going, we'll probably have a live event scheduled, a separate one, and then we'll just it'll be a mess, but that's how we do things. Moderate Risk Day will be running live commentary probably for most of the evening as it takes shape. And hopefully we get away with it fairly unscathed. But certainly a lot of warning being given. We'll have updates on social media as well. Search Force 13. And feel free to support us. We'd really appreciate that. We've got plenty of links below, plenty of ways you can do that. But for now, we'll say goodbye, and we'll see you again tomorrow for this big Moderate Risk Day, which is on the horizon. And we'll leave you with this imagery of the live radar imagery in southern Texas, this little storm cell moving pretty close to Corpus Christi. But from us, it's good night.